everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Angel and today I'm sharing some of my final Easter projects. These are super easy and super quick. For this first project, I'm going to be using this little tag that I got from Dollar Tree, and I am going to go ahead and cut those beads off, but we are going to still be using those. So I set those beads aside for now, and I'm going to start working on the tag part. I just mixed up a little bit of my burnt umber paint with some water, and I'm going to brush this all over the front, back, and sides of this tag, and then I will use a paper towel to wipe off any of the excess. Then, just still using that same paint and water combination, I'm going to stain up all of those wood beads. And I'll set all of that aside to dry, and I'm going to start working on some eggs to add to this project. These are Dollar Tree eggs from a little garland that I had left over, and I'm just going to add these onto some skewers so that it is easier to paint them. Then I just mixed up some of my white chalk paint with some of my apple barrel antique white, and I'm going to go over all of these eggs with 2 coats of this color. Now, switching back to that tag while my eggs are drying, I'm putting some glue over top of this front side so that we can do a crackle effect. Once I have my glue on here, I will let that dry for just a few minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then I will go over it with a heavy coat of my white chalk paint. Then I'll set that aside once again to dry and crackle. Now, for my eggs, I did want to speckle these a little bit, but I'm going to be using some of my European gold rub and buff to do this. I just thought the little touch of gold would be really pretty. And of course, I'm using a stenciling brush and just dabbing this on there. Now I'm going to put this garland all back together, and I'm using some of this Dollar Tree string, and I'm just putting it into a bigger sewing needle, and that just makes it so much easier to get it through these eggs. Then I'm going to start with an egg and then do 2 of those beads and then another egg and continue that pattern till I'm finished. Once I get to the end, I am going to tie a little knot, leaving a loop at the end so that I can cut that. And then I'll take some more of that Dollar Tree string and wrap it around my hand to make a tassel. And then I'll just cut that string so that I can open it, and then I will lay it down in between those 2 pieces I cut earlier to tie that onto here. Then I just cut down another little piece to wrap around the top of it. Now I'm moving back to that little tag piece after it had dried and crackled, and I'm going to be using these stamps that I got from Amazon. I'll have all of these linked below for you, but I'm using this little Peter Rabbit stamp, and then also I'm using these little edge pieces from a different stamp set that I had. Then I also decided to add this little floral stamp right where the hole is on that tag. And as you can see here, once my ink dried, I went back over this whole thing with a sanding block just to make it look more worn and aged. And for the final step, all I had to do was add this on to the other end of my garland and just tie a knot. For this next project, I picked up this little wicker plate from my thrift store. It looked like someone had already started painting it and just never finished it. So I'm going in with some of my white chalk paint, and I ended up doing 2 more coats of that onto this plate. Then I found this really cute checkered pattern fabric at Dollar Tree. So I'm using one of the Dollar Tree bamboo rings, which fit perfectly into my plate. And I'm just going to trace around that and then cut this fabric down to fit inside the plate. Now I am also planning to use that bamboo ring, and as you could see, I had already painted it black, but ended up deciding I didn't like that. So here I went back in and painted that with some of my white chalk paint. Now I'm going to use some painter's tape to tape down that fabric just so it's not moving around. And also I wanted to stretch it out so that there are no wrinkles in this because I want to put a stencil on here. I want to use this little bunny head stencil that I got from Amazon. This came with a 3-pack of stencils, and so I'm going to also tape that down to the fabric, and then I'm using some black chalk paint, but I'm making sure that I am dabbing off a ton of the excess paint before stenciling this. Then I started out hot gluing the ring to the fabric, but I end up flipping this over, and it was just easier to add a little bit of hot glue and then pull and stretch this fabric over the ring. And I am just working in small sections so that I can make sure I pull this nice and tight. There was a little bit of excess hanging out, so I just used these small little scissors and trimmed all of that off of there. And finally, I just added some hot glue to the back of this and added it to my plate. For this project, I'm using this little bunny mold that I got from the Dollar Tree. I'm pretty sure it's for cakes or something like that, but I thought this would be a really cute trinket dish. So I grabbed some of my air dry clay and I'm gonna knead that around. And then I am rolling this out. I'm keeping it kind of still thick, but I'm rolling it out to fit into the bunny mold. Now it didn't have to fit perfectly. You'll see here, it doesn't really fit perfect, but that's okay because I'm just going around and shaping and molding this clay until I get it shaped how I want it and down into this mold. Once I have it shaped the way I wanted to, then I just went back over it with my rolling pin to kind of smooth out everywhere that I had been pressing and pushing and kind of messing up the clay, and then I was able to just flip this over and pull it out. Now, of course, once I had it out, it needed some shaping. So I am taking some water and putting it on my fingers, and I'm kind of pinching those edges upward. I'm also using that water to smooth out anything that I didn't get with my rolling pin, to smooth all those edges out. Just make sure if your clay starts to feel a little bit sticky, you just re-wet your fingers, and you can keep doing this for as long as you want. The clay takes a while to dry, and as long as your fingers are staying wet, you're not really going to mess it up. If you have any cracks or any little areas of imperfection, you can also use this technique. But like I said, I'm just using this water and kind of pinching those edges to make a little lip on this trinket dish. You'll also see I'm using that water and rubbing over the top of the bunny head, and I'm kind of pushing that downward as I'm making this so that the trinket dish is a little deeper than those edges, if that makes sense. And again, you can just keep doing this until you're happy with it. For me, I didn't mind if it wasn't perfect. I kind of wanted it to look old and handmade. So it's not going to be perfect. You can, of course, make this as perfect as you want. Once I was pretty happy with the trinket dish, I'm grabbing these letter stamps that I got from Amazon, and I wanted to spell out hop across the bunny head. I was going to use my little acrylic block, but then I didn't want the block to mess up the edges, if that makes sense. So I just did this one at a time with the letters. And then I just set this aside to dry overnight. You can see this is what it looked like the next day. And I thought it was kind of cute that it still had the little bunny face on the bottom of it. Now, I did go back in with a fine grit sandpaper and just kind of go over the edges a little more. Anything that I didn't smooth out too good with my fingers and the water, this just will smooth that right out. And after I sanded everything down, then I went in with some of my white chalk paint and just did one light coat over this just because the clay is more of an off-white color. So I wanted it to be white. And then, of course, I had to add a little bit of gold to this. It's totally optional, but I just used my European gold rub and buff and went over all of those top little edges. For this next project, I'm using this little wood sign that I got from Dollar Tree. It says Home Sweet Home on it, and I'm actually going to be using the back of this because it was already distressed perfectly, but I did want to cover up the Home Sweet Home just to make this nice and cohesive. So I ended up giving this side of it 2 coats of my white chalk paint. And like I said, I did want to actually use the back side of this. You can see it's already nice and distressed. And I'm going to be using this really cute bunny and floral stamp that I got from Amazon with some of my archival ink. And I'm just going to place that right onto this side of the wood block. And this stamp actually fit this wood block perfectly. As you can see, it turned out super cute. But of course, for a final little touch, I'm adding in one of these Dollar Tree crystal knobs. And I did go in with a little bit of my European gold rub and buff and change out that silver little piece on the knob to make it gold. Then I was able to just drill down in the center of the top of this and add the knob. For this project, we are going to be using this adorable little teapot that I got from my thrift store. And I started out by giving this a light spray coating of my Rust-Oleum spray paint just to kind of work as a primer for this. And then I went back over it with 2 coats of my white chalk paint. Now, I found this little vintage cookie cutter at my thrift store and I thought it was super cute. So I'm going to be using that with some of my air dry clay to make kind of a little crockery stamp for this teapot. So I grabbed a large ball of clay and I'm just going to knead that around a little bit. Then I rolled that out just big enough for the little cookie cutter. Then I just kind of pushed it down into the clay and wiggled it around a little bit to leave the impression. And I used this other little round cookie cutter to cut that out. And once I had it cut out, I just worked my way around the edges and made sure that they were all nice and smooth. Then I just used some Dollar Tree gel super glue to attach this to the front of my teapot. And I went back in with some of my white chalk paint and painted over that clay piece so that it would match the teapot. And finally, to bring out some of those details and add some aging, I'm going in with some of my European gold rub and buff and my stenciling brush, and I'm just rubbing this all over the bunny. And then I also added some to the teapot, especially around the rim and the top part of the spout. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed these Easter projects. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.